You know, it's funny, because when I think about our modern world, I sometimes feel like we're constantly bombarded with things that are completely outside of our control.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
The news cycle is a 247 anxiety machine, housing costs are through the roof, and don't even get me started on trying to predict the weather.
Yeah, it does feel like we're living in an age of heightened uncertainty.
It really does. And that's why I think this deep dive on Stoicism is going to be really interesting. We're looking at an article called 10 Lessons from Stoicism to Keep Calm. And I have a feeling that these ancient philosophers might have some surprisingly relevant advice for navigating our modern world.
I think you'll be surprised by how practical Stoicism is. The Stoics were all about finding peace and purpose even in the midst of chaos. And honestly, who couldn't use a little bit more of that these days?
Yeah, no kidding. Okay, so for anyone who might not be familiar with Stoicism, can you give us a real quick overview? What's the core idea here?
Well, at its heart, Stoicism is a philosophy that emphasizes virtue reason and living in harmony with nature. So it's about recognizing that we can't control everything that happens to us, but we can control our reactions to it.
So it's not about being passive or just giving up.
Not at all. It's about focusing our energy on what we can influence rather than wasting it on things that we can't. So it's about finding that sense of inner peace amidst the storm.
Okay, I like that. So the article jumps right into this idea with lesson one, embrace what you can control. And it talks about this concept of the dichotomy of control, which sounds a little bit intimidating, but maybe you can kind of break that down for us.
Yeah, it's actually a pretty simple idea once you wrap your head around it. The Stoics believe that there are things in life that we can control: our thoughts, our actions, our choices. And then there are things that we can't control: the weather, other people's opinions, the housing market, as you said.
Yeah, and it's so easy to get those two categories mixed up, especially when we're feeling stressed or anxious.
It is. We spend so much time worrying about things that are completely outside of our sphere of influence.
Mm.
But the Stoics remind us that true freedom comes from recognizing that distinction and focusing our energy on what we can actually change.
So it's not about controlling the universe, it's about mastering our own inner world.
Exactly. And that's where the power lies. Think about it this way. You can't control the fact that traffic is bad, but you can control how you react to it. You can choose to get frustrated and stressed. Or you can choose to use that time to listen to a podcast, practice mindfulness, or just even enjoy the stillness.
No, that's good. So the situation hasn't changed, but your experience of it has. That's a pretty powerful shift, isn't it?
It is, and it all comes down to recognizing that dichotomy of control.
The article mentions this quote from Epictetus that really drives this point home. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. I've seen that quote a million times, but I feel like I'm only truly understanding it now.
It's one of those quotes that takes on new meaning when you actually start applying it to your life. Because it's easy to agree with it intellectually, but to really internalize it and live by it, that's where the real transformation happens.
Yeah, totally. So for our listener, think about this. What external things are you spending energy worrying about that you actually can't control? And how might shifting your focus to your own reactions and choices change your experience of those situations?
Yeah, it's an invitation to reclaim your power to choose peace instead of frustration, even in the face of challenging circumstances.
Okay, that's a great starting point.
Yeah.
Lesson 2 in the article builds on this idea with accept life's unpredictability. It seems like the Stoics had a lot to say about the importance of accepting what we can't change.
They did, and it makes sense when you think about it. Life is full of surprises, both good and bad, and trying to control every outcome is just a recipe for disappointment and frustration.
Right. The article quotes Marcus Aurelius here, and it's a good one. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That really resonates with me, especially in today's world where it feels like everything is moving so fast, and it's impossible to predict what's going to happen next.
Yeah, it's like trying to hold on to sand. The tighter you grip, the more it slips through your fingers.
Right. But if you just open your hand and let it flow, there's that sense of ease.
Exactly. And that's what the Stoics were getting at. Acceptance isn't about giving up or becoming passive. It's about recognizing that we're not in control of the universe and finding a sense of peace in that surrender.
The article uses this image of going with the flow of a river rather than fighting against the current, which I really like because it highlights that acceptance isn't about being swept away by circumstances. It's about navigating them skillfully, using our energy wisely, and adapting to the ever-changing flow of life.
And sometimes that means letting go of the need to control every outcome and trusting that even when things feel chaotic, there's an underlying order to the universe.
Okay, so we've talked about embracing what we can control and accepting what we can't. Now, lesson 3 brings us to a practice that feels very relevant to our modern lives. Practice mindfulness. And I have to admit, I was a little bit surprised to see this in an article about Stoicism. I always kind of associated mindfulness with Eastern traditions, like Buddhism.
Yeah, it's true that mindfulness has deep roots in Eastern philosophy. But the Stoics were also big proponents of being present in the moment. They understood that our minds tend to wander, getting lost in regrets about the past or anxieties about the future.
And they saw that as a problem.
They did. They believed that true happiness and peace of mind could only be found in the present moment.
Which makes sense. The past is gone and the future is uncertain. All we really have is this moment.
Exactly. And the Stoics offered practices for cultivating that awareness of the present moment. They encourage us to pay attention to our senses, to notice our thoughts and emotions without judgment, and to simply be present with whatever is happening right now.
So it's not about emptying our minds or trying to stop thinking altogether.
Not at all. It's more about observing our thoughts and emotions with a sense of detachment, recognizing that they are fleeting and don't define who we are. It's about choosing to focus our attention on the present moment, rather than getting swept away by the constant chatter of our minds.
Right. That feels particularly challenging in today's world with all the distractions and demands on our attention.
It is,
Yeah.
but that's also why it's so important. Mindfulness is like a muscle that gets stronger with practice. The more we practice bringing our attention back to the present moment, the easier it becomes to resist those distractions and find a sense of peace amidst the chaos.
The article quotes Seneca here, and it's one of my favorite quotes about mindfulness. True happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future. It's like he's giving us permission to let go of that constant worry and just be here now.
And isn't that a relief to release the burden of carrying the past and the future on our shoulders and just allow ourselves to experience the fullness of this moment?
It is. It feels like a weight has been lifted just thinking about it. Okay, so we've got embrace what you can control, accept life's unpredictability, and practice mindfulness. These are already starting to sound like essential tools for navigating the modern world.
They are, and they all tie together beautifully, don't they? Recognizing what we can and can't control, accepting the unpredictable nature of life, and cultivating a practice of mindfulness. These are all pathways to greater peace and resilience.
Okay, I'm ready for lesson 4. Cultivate resilience. Something tells me the Stoics had a lot to say about bouncing back from challenges.
Oh, they did. They saw challenges not as setbacks, but as opportunities for growth. And they believed that our ability to bounce back from adversity, to learn and grow from our experiences, that's what truly defines us.
I love that perspective. It's like they're saying, bring on the challenges, I'm ready to learn and grow.
Exactly. The Stoics understood that life is full of ups and downs, that we will inevitably face hardship and setbacks. But they also believed that within each challenge lies an opportunity to discover our own inner strength, our capacity for resilience, and our ability to adapt and overcome.
Yeah, it's like that quote from Epictetus. Difficulties are things that show a person what they are. It's a little tough love, but I get it. It's in those moments of difficulty that we really see what we're made of, right?
We do. It's easy to be strong and courageous when everything is going our way.
Yeah.
But it's in those moments of adversity that our true character is revealed.
The article uses the analogy of resilience being like a muscle that gets stronger with use, which I find really empowering. It means that the more we face those challenges, the more resilient we become.
And the Stoics offered practices for cultivating that resilience. They encouraged us to view challenges as opportunities for growth, to focus on what we can learn from difficult experiences, and to find meaning and purpose even in the midst of suffering.
So it's not about avoiding discomfort or pretending that everything is always easy. It's about leaning into those challenges, knowing that they have the power to transform us and make us stronger.
Exactly. And that's a message we need to hear, especially in a culture that often encourages us to avoid discomfort at all costs.
Okay, so we're building our Stoic toolkit here. We've got control acceptance, mindfulness resilience. What's next?
Lesson 5 brings us to a principle that ties all of these together. Choose your response wisely.
This feels like it's getting to the heart of Stoicism, that idea that, while we can't always control what happens to us, we can control how we respond.
It is, and it's perhaps the most empowering principle of Stoicism, because it reminds us that we always have a choice, even in the most challenging circumstances.
Right.
We can choose to react from a place of fear, anger, or frustration, or we can choose to respond from a place of wisdom, courage, and compassion.
And the Stoics believe that our responses, those choices we make in those moments, have the power to shape our entire experience of life.
They did. They believed that by choosing our responses wisely, by aligning our actions with our values, we can create a life of meaning and purpose, even in the face of adversity.
There's that great quote from Epictetus. It's not things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them. It's like he's saying the event itself is neutral. It's our interpretation of it, the story we tell ourselves about it, that determines how we feel and how we respond.
Exactly. And that's where the Stoic virtues come into play. Wisdom, justice, courage, temperance. These aren't just abstract ideals. They're practical tools for guiding our responses, ensuring that we're acting in alignment with our values, even when things get tough.
I like that. So it's not just about thinking virtuous thoughts. It's about embodying those virtues in our actions and our responses to the world around us.
It is, and the Stoics believe that the more we practice responding from a place of virtue, the more those virtues become ingrained in our character, shaping who we are at our core.
Okay, this is getting pretty deep. So we've got controlling what we can, accepting what we can't, practicing mindfulness, cultivating resilience, and choosing our responses wisely. I'm starting to see how these principles all weave together to create a framework for navigating life's challenges.
They do, and they offer a path toward greater peace, purpose, and fulfillment, even in a world that often feels chaotic and unpredictable.
This is just what I needed today.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
And we're only halfway through the list. There are 5 more lessons to explore, each offering its own unique insights into the art of living a good life.
Okay, I'm ready for more Stoic wisdom. What's next?
Lesson 6 takes us into the realm of desire, with limit excessive desires. And this one feels particularly relevant in our modern consumer-driven world, doesn't it? It really does. Everywhere we turn, there's something new, to want something that's going to make us happier, more successful, more whatever.
Right, and social media just amplifies that. It's like a constant stream of perfect lives and must-have products. It's exhausting.
Absolutely. And the Stoics were really wary of this tendency to chase after external things for happiness. They believe that true contentment comes from within, not from accumulating a bunch of possessions or achievements.
Right, that makes sense, but how do you actually put that into practice, especially in a world that's constantly telling you to want more, buy more, be more?
One of the key Stoic practices was to distinguish between needs and wants.
Okay.
They recognize that we need certain things for survival, food, shelter, clothing, but that many of our desires go far beyond that.
Okay, so it's about getting clear on what truly matters, what actually contributes to our well-being, and what's just kind of extraneous noise.
Exactly. The Stoics believe that by simplifying our desires, by focusing on what's truly essential, we can free ourselves from that constant craving that leads to so much dissatisfaction and unhappiness.
The article quotes Seneca on this, and it's a good one. It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor. That's such a powerful reminder that it's not about what we have, it's about our attitude towards what we have.
It is, and it's a perspective that can be incredibly liberating, because it means that contentment is available to all of us, regardless of our circumstances. It's not about having more, it's about wanting less.
This idea of wanting less really challenges our modern notions of success and happiness, doesn't it?
It does. We're conditioned to believe that more is always better, more money, more possessions, more experiences. But the Stoics were saying, hold on a minute, maybe that's not the path to true fulfillment. Maybe the key to happiness lies in appreciating what we already have and cultivating contentment with simplicity.
Okay, so for our listener, how can we start to apply this principle in our own lives? What are some practical steps we can take to limit those excessive desires and cultivate a sense of contentment?
One practice that the Stoics recommended was negative visualization.
Negative visualization. Okay, that sounds a little intense.
I know the name can be a little bit misleading. It's not about dwelling on negative thoughts or expecting the worst. It's actually a technique for cultivating gratitude and appreciating what we have by contemplating the possibility of losing it.
Okay, so it's like a mental exercise in appreciating the good things in our lives by imagining what it would be like without them.
Exactly. For example, instead of just taking your morning coffee for granted, you might pause for a moment and imagine what it would be like to wake up without it. Not in a depressing way, but simply as a way to heighten your appreciation for that simple pleasure.
Right. I can see how that would make you savor that first sip even more.
Right, and the Stoics believe that practicing this regularly can help us become less attached to material possessions, external validation, even our health and relationships, knowing that these things are ultimately impermanent.
It's like that saying, you don't know what you've got till it's gone. But instead of waiting for something to be gone to appreciate it, we're proactively cultivating that appreciation now.
Precisely. It's about shifting our perspective from one of taking things for granted to one of deep gratitude for all that we have in this moment.
Okay, that's a really interesting technique. I'm definitely going to try that. Now, lesson 7 shifts gears a bit and focuses on commit to virtue. And I think when a lot of people hear the word virtue, they might think of it as kind of outdated or even a bit preachy, but I'm guessing the Stoics had a different take on it.
They did. For the Stoics, virtue wasn't just some abstract ideal, it was a way of life. It was about aligning our actions with our values, striving to live in accordance with reason and nature, and embodying those 4 cardinal virtues that we mentioned earlier: wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance.
Right, and they didn't see these virtues as just being about, like, being a good person in kind of a moralistic sense, right?
Not necessarily. They saw virtue as a form of ardate, which is a Greek word that encompasses excellent skill and fulfilling one's potential.
Okay, so it applies to more than just morality. It's about striving for excellence in all areas of life.
Exactly. It's about living with intention, purpose, and integrity. It's about developing our skills, using our talents, and contributing to the world in a meaningful way.
I like that. It's not just about being good. It's about being good at something, about using our unique abilities to make a positive impact. So how did the Stoics suggest we cultivate these virtues? Was it just about, like, willpower and self-discipline?
Well, they believe that virtue is something we develop through practice, through consistently choosing to act in alignment with our values.
So it's not about being perfect. It's about making those choices over and over again, even when it's difficult.
Exactly. And they recognize that this is an ongoing process, that we'll inevitably make mistakes along the way. But the key is to learn from those mistakes, to keep striving, and to never give up on our pursuit of virtue.
Okay, that feels very different from the way virtue is often portrayed as this kind of unattainable ideal that only a select few can achieve. The Stoics are saying, no, it's a process, it's a journey, and it's available to all of us.
It is. And it's a journey that's worth taking because the Stoics believe that a virtuous life is a fulfilling life, a life of meaning and purpose.
Okay, so we've talked about embracing what we can control, accepting life's unpredictability, practicing mindfulness, cultivating resilience, choosing our responses wisely, and committing to virtue. That's a pretty solid foundation for living a good life, right?
It is, and it all leads us to lesson 8, which might be the most challenging principle of Stoicism. Embrace the transitory nature of life.
Okay, I'm sensing some tough love coming here.
It's definitely a principle that can be difficult to fully grasp, let alone embrace. But the Stoics believe that understanding the impermanence of everything, including our own lives, can actually be a source of liberation, not despair.
Okay, I'm going to need you to unpack that one for me. How can embracing impermanence be liberating? It seems like it would just make everything feel meaningless.
Well, the Stoics weren't suggesting that life is meaningless. In fact, they believe that by recognizing its impermanence, we can appreciate each moment more deeply, cherish the people and experiences in our lives more fully, and live with a greater sense of urgency and purpose.
So it's like that saying, live each day as if it were your last. But instead of it being a morbid reminder of death, it's an invitation to embrace life fully, to savor each experience, and to not take anything for granted.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that everything is in a constant state of flux, that nothing lasts forever, and that this is actually a beautiful thing. Because it means that every moment is precious, every experience is unique, and every interaction is a gift.
The article quotes Marcus Aurelius here, and it's one that always makes me stop and think, all things fade and quickly turn to myth. It's a stark reminder of the fleeting nature of time and the impermanence of everything around us.
It is. But it's also a reminder that nothing is permanent, not even our pain and suffering, which could be a source of comfort when we're going through difficult times.
Yeah, because even in the darkest of nights, we can remember that the dawn will eventually come.
Exactly. And that even though we will inevitably face challenges, those challenges won't last forever.
This has given me a whole new perspective on impermanence. Instead of fearing it or trying to resist it, what if we could embrace it, see it as a natural part of life, and even find beauty and meaning in it?
That's the Stoic approach.
Yeah.
And it's not easy, but it's a perspective that can be incredibly liberating because it frees us from the illusion of permanence, allows us to appreciate the present moment more deeply, and empowers us to live with a greater sense of purpose and intention.
Okay, so we've embraced what we can control, accepted life's unpredictability, practiced mindfulness, cultivated resilience, chosen our responses, wisely committed to virtue, and now embraced the transitory nature of life. I'm starting to feel like a Stoic master in training. What's next on our journey?
Lesson 9 brings us to a practice that's been having a real moment lately, and for good reason. Cultivate gratitude.
Okay, I have to admit I'm a bit of a gratitude skeptic. It always feels a little forced, like I'm supposed to be happy about everything all the time, even when things are tough. But maybe the Stoics had a different take on it.
They did. They saw gratitude not as a forced emotion, but as a way of perceiving the world, a lens through which we can choose to see the good even amidst the bad.
So it's not about denying the challenges or pretending everything is perfect. It's about choosing to focus on what we have rather than what we lack.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they believe that cultivating gratitude is a practice, something we can cultivate through intentional effort, like a muscle we can strengthen over time.
The article quotes Seneca again here, and this one really gets to the heart of it. He is a wise man who does not grieve for the things which he has not, but rejoices for those which he has. It's like he's saying, why waste our energy on what we don't have when we can choose to appreciate what we do have?
And isn't that a more fulfilling way to live? To focus on the abundance in our lives rather than the scarcity?
I can see that. It's like shifting our perspective from a place of lack to a place of abundance. And it's not about denying the reality of our challenges. It's about choosing to focus on the good, even in the midst of those challenges.
Precisely. And the Stoics believe that cultivating gratitude is a pathway to greater happiness, contentment, and peace of mind. Because when we're focused on what we're grateful for, it's harder to get bogged down by all that negativity, worry, and dissatisfaction.
Okay, that makes sense. So for our listener, what are some practical ways that we can cultivate gratitude in our daily lives? I know gratitude journals are a popular suggestion, but are there other things we can try?
Absolutely. One simple practice is to take a few moments each day to reflect on what you're grateful for. It could be as simple as a warm cup of coffee, a sunny day, a kind word from a friend.
Yeah, it's about noticing those little things that often go unnoticed.
Exactly. And really allowing yourself to feel that gratitude, to savor those moments of joy and appreciation. Another practice is to express your gratitude to others.
Oh, so write a thank you note, call a friend to tell them you appreciate them, or even just acknowledge the kindness of a stranger.
Exactly. Expressing gratitude not only strengthens our relationships, but it also reinforces those feelings of gratitude within ourselves.
I like that. It's a win-win. Okay, so we've explored embracing what we can control, accepting life's unpredictability, practicing mindfulness, cultivating resilience, choosing our responses, wisely committing to virtue, embracing the transitory nature of life, and now cultivating gratitude. I feel like we're putting together a pretty powerful toolkit for living a good life.
We are.
Yeah.
And it all culminates in Lesson 10, which is all about continuous growth and self-improvement. Keep learning and growing.
This feels like a very fitting end to our exploration of Stoicism, because it's not just about acquiring knowledge, it's about applying that knowledge to our lives, right?
It is. The Stoics believe that the pursuit of wisdom and virtue is a lifelong endeavor, a journey of continuous growth and self-discovery. And they saw learning not just as a means to an end, but as an end in itself.
So it's not just about learning to get a better job or make more money, it's about the joy of learning, the expansion of our minds, and the fulfillment that comes from constantly striving to become the best versions of ourselves.
Exactly. And they believe that this pursuit of knowledge and virtue is what gives life meaning and purpose.
There's something really beautiful about that, isn't there? That we're all on this journey of learning and growth, and that it's a journey that never truly ends.
It's a journey that keeps us engaged, curious, and constantly evolving.
And it's a journey that we can all embark on, regardless of our age, background, or circumstances.
Absolutely. All it takes is a willingness to learn, a desire to grow, and a commitment to living a life of purpose and meaning.
Okay, so we've covered all 10 lessons from the article, but I'm curious, are there any other key Stoic principles or practices that you think would be helpful for our listener to know?
That's a great question. You know, one that comes to mind is the Stoic practice of memento mori, which literally translates to remember that you will die.
Oh, okay, that one's even more intense than negative visualization.
I know it sounds a little morbid, right?
Yay!
But the Stoics didn't see it that way. For them, reflecting on our mortality wasn't meant to be depressing. It was meant to be motivating.
Motivating how?
Well, by reminding ourselves of our limited time on this earth, it can help us prioritize what truly matters. Let go of those petty concerns and live each day with greater intention and purpose.
So it's like a wake-up call to not waste our precious time on things that don't truly matter.
Exactly. It's about asking ourselves, if I knew I only had a limited time left, how would I choose to spend it? What would I prioritize? What would I let go of?
That's such a powerful question. It really puts things into perspective, because when we strip away all the distractions, all the shoulds and have-tos, what are we left with? What truly matters to us?
That's the heart of it. Memento mori is an invitation to live a life that aligns with our deepest values, to make the most of each moment, and to leave a positive impact on the world.
It's about living with a sense of urgency, not in a panicked way, but in a way that inspires us to make each day count.
Exactly. It's about embracing life fully with all its joys and sorrows, knowing that our time here is precious and fleeting.
Okay, I'm starting to see how these seemingly negative practices can actually be incredibly positive and empowering.
They are. They're about facing the realities of life, both the good and the bad, with courage, clarity, and a deep appreciation for the present moment.
You know, it's amazing how much wisdom the Stoics packed into such a seemingly simple philosophy.
It is. And the beauty of it is that it's still so accessible and relevant today, no matter what our background, beliefs, or circumstances.
Okay, so we've talked about these Stoic practices, but I'm also curious about the people who were some of the key figures in the Stoic movement and what were their unique contributions.
That's a great question. There were so many brilliant minds who contributed to Stoicism over the centuries, but a few key figures really stand out.
Okay, let's hear about them.
Well, we've already mentioned Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius, and Seneca quite a bit today. They're considered some of the most influential Stoic philosophers, and for good reason. Their writings offer profound insights into the human condition and provide practical guidance on how to live a virtuous and fulfilling life.
Okay, so give us a little background on each of them for those of us who might not be as familiar with the Stoic all-stars.
Absolutely. So Epictetus was a former slave who became a renowned philosopher in ancient Rome. His teachings focused on the importance of self-control, acceptance, and living in accordance with nature.
And what about Marcus Aurelius? He wasn't just a philosopher, right?
He wasn't. He was actually the Roman emperor from 161 to 180 AD. Can you imagine the pressure of ruling an empire while also trying to live by these Stoic principles?
Talk about a high-stakes environment for practicing Stoicism.
Right. But he managed to do both. And his personal reflections, which were compiled in a book called Meditations, offer a really powerful testament to the transformative power of Stoic philosophy.
Okay, and last but not least, Seneca.
Seneca was a Roman statesman, playwright, and philosopher. His writings are known for their eloquence, their wit, and their practical wisdom. He was a big proponent of living in the present moment, cultivating gratitude, and focusing on what truly matters.
So 3 very different individuals, all united by this shared philosophy. It's amazing how Stoicism could resonate with people from such diverse backgrounds and life experiences.
It is. It speaks to the universality of these principles, their ability to transcend time, culture, and circumstance.
Okay, so we've got Epictetus, the former slave-turned-philosopher, Marcus Aurelius, the emperor who sought wisdom amidst power, and Seneca, the statesman and writer who emphasized living with intention. 3 very different perspectives, all contributing to this rich tapestry of Stoic thought.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that Stoicism wasn't a rigid dogma. It was a living philosophy that evolved and adapted over time.
Right, so it wasn't about blindly following rules. It was about applying these principles to the unique challenges of each individual's life.
Precisely. And that's why it's still so relevant today. We can take these core principles, acceptance, self-control, virtue, living in harmony with nature, and apply them to our own modern lives.
Yeah, it's like a framework for navigating the complexities of the human experience, no matter what era we happen to be living in.
Exactly. And it's a framework that's helped countless individuals throughout history find greater peace, meaning, and purpose in their lives.
You know, it's fascinating to think about how these ideas, which originated thousands of years ago, can still offer such profound guidance and inspiration today. It's a testament to the enduring power of human wisdom.
It is. And it's a reminder that we're all part of this long lineage of seekers, all striving to understand ourselves and the world around us and to live our best lives.
So for our listener, I think the takeaway here is that Stoicism is more than just a set of ancient principles. It's a living philosophy that can empower us to navigate the challenges of modern life with greater resilience, clarity, and purpose.
Absolutely. And it's a philosophy that's worth exploring further. I encourage you to delve into the writings of Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and others who have carried the torch of Stoicism across the centuries.
Because within their words, you might just find the guidance and inspiration you need to live a life of greater peace, meaning, and fulfillment.
You know, something we haven't touched on yet is the Stoic perspective on emotions.
Oh, good point. It's easy to think of Stoicism as being all about being emotionless, like some kind of ancient Spock from Star Trek. But I have a feeling it's more nuanced than that.
It definitely is. The Stoics weren't about suppressing emotions altogether. They recognized that emotions are a natural part of the human experience. But they also believe that we have a choice in how we respond to them.
So it's not about denying our feelings, it's about managing them wisely.
Exactly. The Stoics believed that allowing our emotions to control us could lead to impulsive actions, poor poor decisions, and ultimately unhappiness.
Right. It's like that saying, don't make any permanent decisions while you're feeling temporary emotions.
Right. The Stoics were all about responding to situations from a place of reason and virtue, rather than reacting from a place of raw emotion.
So how did they suggest we do that? I mean, it's one thing to say don't let your emotions control you, but it's another thing to actually put that into practice.
Well, one of the key practices they emphasized was cognitive reframing, which is a fancy way of saying changing the way we think about a situation.
Okay, so instead of getting swept away by our initial emotional response, we can pause and choose to see the situation from a different perspective.
Exactly. For example, let's say you get stuck in traffic. Your initial reaction might be frustration and anger. But a Stoic might pause and reframe that situation by thinking, okay, this is an opportunity to practice patience. I can use this time to listen to a podcast, enjoy the scenery, or simply be present with my thoughts.
So it's about shifting our focus from what's outside of our control to what is within our control, our thoughts and our reactions.
Precisely. And by doing so, we can choose to experience a different emotion even in the same situation. Instead of frustration, we might choose to experience peace, acceptance, or even gratitude.
That's such a powerful reminder that we're not at the mercy of our emotions. We have a choice in how we respond to them.
And that choice can make all the difference in our experience of life. It's about taking back control of our inner world, even when the outer world feels chaotic.
This is giving me a whole new perspective on emotional intelligence. It's not just about being aware of our emotions, it's about having the tools and practices to manage them effectively.
Exactly. And the Stoics offer us a wealth of wisdom and practical techniques for doing just that. From cognitive reframing to negative visualization to mindfulness, they provide us with a toolkit for cultivating emotional resilience and inner peace.
Okay, I'm starting to see how Stoicism can be so much more than just a philosophy. It's almost like a lifestyle, a way of approaching life with greater intention, clarity, and purpose.
It is. And it's a lifestyle that's available to all of us. We don't have to be ancient Roman philosophers to benefit from these timeless principles.
So for our listener, if you're feeling overwhelmed by the chaos of modern life, if you're struggling with difficult emotions, or if you're simply seeking a path toward greater peace and fulfillment, I encourage you to explore the wisdom of the Stoics.
You might just find that their teachings, while ancient, hold the key to navigating the challenges of modern life with greater resilience, wisdom, and grace.
Now, all this talk about controlling our reactions and focusing on what we can control has got me thinking about something else I read recently. It was about how modern society often overemphasizes individualism and how that can sometimes work against us when it comes to facing life's challenges.
Oh, that's interesting. I can see how that ties in with the Stoic principles we've been discussing. What was the main idea of this other article?
Well, it basically argued that while individual effort and self-reliance are important, we often underestimate the power of community and interdependence, especially when it comes to navigating difficult times.
That makes a lot of sense. Even the Stoics, with all their emphasis on individual responsibility, recognize the importance of community.
Yeah, they did. You know, they understood that we're not meant to go through life alone, that we need each other for support, encouragement, and perspective.
Right. It's like they understood that we're not meant to go through life alone, that we need each other for support and encouragement and perspective. Exactly.
Yeah.
In a way, this connects back to that idea of accepting what we can't control. Sometimes the things that happen to us are simply too big to handle on our own.
Yeah.
And we need the support of others to help us through those tough times.
Yeah, I think that's something we've lost sight of a bit in our modern hyper-individualistic culture. We're so focused on self-reliance that we sometimes forget the importance of reaching out for help, of leaning on others when we need to.
It's like we've bought into this myth that asking for help is a sign of weakness, when in reality, it's a sign of strength and wisdom.
Yeah, totally. It takes courage to admit that we can't do it all on our own, that we need the support of others.
And the Stoics understood this. They believed that we have a duty to support one another, to be there for each other in times of need. They saw community as an essential part of living a virtuous life.
So it's not just about mastering our own emotions and reactions. It's about recognizing that we're all interconnected and that we have a responsibility to care for one another.
Exactly. It's about cultivating a sense of shared humanity, recognizing that we're all in this together and that by supporting each other, we can create a more resilient, compassionate, and fulfilling world.
Wow, that's such a beautiful message. It's like the Stoics were offering us a blueprint, not just for individual well-being, but for a more just and compassionate society.
And that's something we desperately need in today's world, right?
Mhm.
A reminder that we're not isolated individuals, but part of something much larger than ourselves.
Okay, so we've explored the core principles of Stoicism, delved into some practical techniques for managing emotions, and even touched on the importance of community and interdependence. I feel like we've barely scratched the surface of this rich and complex philosophy.
We have.
Hmm.
But I think we've given our listener a good foundation for understanding the essence of Stoicism and its relevance to modern life.
And hopefully we've inspired them to explore this ancient wisdom further and see how they can apply these timeless principles to their own lives.
Absolutely. Because in a world that often feels chaotic and uncertain, the Stoics offer us a path toward greater peace, resilience, and fulfillment.
This has been such an insightful deep dive. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise and for guiding us through this exploration of Stoicism.
It's been my pleasure. I always love delving into these timeless principles and seeing how they can be applied to our modern lives.
And for our listener, we want to leave you with a final thought. We've talked a lot about what we can control our thoughts, our reactions, our choices, but what about those things that truly are outside our control?
That's a great question, and it's one that the Stoics grappled with as well. They understood that life is full of uncertainty, that things don't always go our way, and that sometimes we experience loss, heartbreak, and pain that can feel unbearable.
So what did they suggest we do in those situations?
Well, they offered us a perspective that, while perhaps not easy to embrace, can be incredibly comforting. They reminded us that even in the midst of suffering, even when we feel like we're drowning in sorrow, there's still something we can hold on to.
And what's that?
Our own inner strength, our capacity for resilience, our ability to choose love, compassion, and forgiveness, even when it feels impossible.
It's like they're saying that even when everything else falls apart, there's still a part of us that remains whole, a part of us that can't be broken.
Exactly. And that part of us, that inner core of strength and resilience, is what allows us to rise above our circumstances, to find meaning and purpose even in the midst of suffering, and to continue moving forward one step at a time.
That's such a powerful message of hope. It's a reminder that even in our darkest moments, we have the power to choose how we respond, to find the strength to keep going, and to ultimately emerge from the darkness transformed.
And that's the true essence of Stoicism, isn't it? It's not about avoiding suffering or pretending that life is always easy. It's about facing the challenges of life with courage, wisdom, and a deep understanding of our own inner strength.
It's about recognizing that even in the midst of chaos, there's still a part of us that remains calm, centered, and connected to something greater than ourselves.
And it's from that place of inner peace that we can truly find the strength to navigate life's storms, to support one another, and to create a world that's a little bit brighter, a little bit kinder, and a little bit more loving.
This has been such an enriching deep dive into Stoicism. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope you found it as insightful and inspiring as we have. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep striving to live your best life.